All right, so this time around, we're taking a look, at least initially, at the GitHub connector for the Power Platform and Logic apps. And there's a lot that you can do with the GitHub connector. There's other stuff that you can't do as well. So obviously, you need a GitHub account in order to use the connector, which can limit your access somewhat, based on the type of account you have and what you can do with it. And there's also a fairly small number of connections calls that you can make per, for instance, 100 calls per minute, um, as far as the flow or the throughput. So it does have some limitations around that, but it still has a lot of usefulness that you can put to work for you. So for instance, let's take a look through some of the actions here. You can add a repository to the organization secret. You can check if a user is a collaborator in the repository. You can compare a couple of commits. So if you get the commit IDs, then you can compare the two commits and it'll give you some information about those commits and how they compare to one another. You can create a pull request. So, if you have a couple branches and you want to do a pull request from one branch to another, you can create that this way. I create a reference. I create a dispatch event. Excuse me. Um, if you want to create a new repository using a template, you can do that. Well, I think here, kind of getting into some of the more useful things that the connector has is creating an issue. So I think one of the things that I've seen the most as far as the usage of this connector is using it to take feedback, from clients or from developers or business, users or whatever it might be, and turning those into issues in your repository. You can do that fairly automatically through Power Automate, and that you can update your secrets. You can delete a webhook. You can search for issues by state or keyword, state and keyword. You can get information about a particular issue if you have the ID of the issue. You can get information about a particular pull request if you've got the ID for it. You can get a reference. Um, if you've got an ID, you can get information about the repository. You can get the public key for a repository. You can list all the issues in a repository. You can list all the pull requests. You can get information about a particular user, um, or about the currently authenticated user. Um, so you can uh, get information about the files that are tied to a pull request. Kind of talk about pull requests in general. One of the things that you can't really do is to work with branches with GitHub. So it kind of lists a little bit, or lists limits a bit what you can do with the GitHub connector. You can't you can't create a new branch. You can't put files into a branch, check in files, check out stuff, anything like that. So there are some limitations around that kind of stuff. But if you are handling the files and the branches in another way, then you can automate the processes around pull requests somewhat in here. You can get the labels. You can get for both the repository and an issue. You list milestones. You can get all the public repositories that are tied to a user or to an organization, um, or for an authenticated user. Uh, if you're signed in, with the account that you're signed in with, you can get your private repositories as well. You can get available signees for an issue in a repository. You can do a merge of a pull request. So you might be able to find ways to automate that merge process if you've got issues around that. You can remove requested reviewers from a pull request. Remove selected repository from an organization secret. Request reviewers for a pull request. If you want to assign a pull request to a specific set of users or team. Uh, One of the probably the more useful things is to do like a global search of GitHub. One of the things that requires that you do is be familiar with the GraphQL API for GitHub. So you can see, you obviously have to know GraphQL in general, but you also have to learn the schema for the GraphQL API for GitHub, and they do have that all documented here. So you could create a query and do queries against the entirety of GitHub using that GraphQL schema that GitHub supports. And like I said, there's a full set of documentation around that uh, and what you can do with that. And there's also an Explorer that you can practice with. So let's see here. One of the things is public schema here. If you want to look at what the schema is, you can open that up. Let's see, I don't have that visible here. But you can download it and you can look at what the schema is so you can get all the information that you would need to create those queries. But that's the biggest thing to remember about this searching GitHub using query is that you have to do a GraphQL query for that. You can update a milestone or a pull request. You can also update an issue. So let's play around with that just a little bit, mainly around the issues for now. So I've got a sample uh, flow here that I'm creating, and we'll go in here to GitHub. So we're going to add an action. We're going to do GitHub, do a search for that. And then you can look at all those items here. And the good thing about this, I mean, there's a lot in their tag preview, but they all work very well. There really isn't anything that's deprecated, so there's nothing here that you'll come across that doesn't work. Let's look at, say, listing the repositories for a particular user. So let's see here, git list all repositories for the authenticated user. So I am the authenticated user here with my account. And you can do some filtering here based on what you want to see. I'm just going to leave all the defaults here. We'll just go ahead and save that and test. Do test. And of course, they'll check to make sure that you're signed in. I am already signed in with my GitHub connector using my GitHub account. And I'll run that. And that has run through. There we go. Just took a minute to pop up. So you can see here your standard kind of output from that. So it's more useful here to kind of look at the raw outputs for that. You can see a bunch of header type stuff here, and then we get into the body here, and that lists information about the repositories and the information that's relevant to that kind of stuff. For instance, here, first repository that comes up. This is a repository I created for a talk that I gave at StirTrek earlier this year. You can see the owner, you can see the ID of the repository, get information about that, information about the repo itself, and you can see the link to the repository itself, description, and so on and so forth here. There's a bunch of different information that you get about each repository as you go through here. So let's go ahead and go back to edit here. And we're going to do let's do create an issue. So name of the repository owner, that's me. Repository name, we'll use my 2025 StirTrek. And we want to create a title for the issue. So I'll say to slide deck is broken, something like that. There's also an optional one. You could do a body, so we'll add a body to it, and the body will say doesn't work. We'll save that. I'll go ahead and test it. Okay, hopefully I typed those in correctly. I think I got the name right. Oh, no, it's not found. Okay. Oops, not the inputs. Not found. Let's see here. I get the name of it wrong. Oh, it's 2025 May Star Trek. Okay. Whoops. So let's go back over here and edit. And go ahead and get rid of this one. And save that and test it. Gone. Oh, issues are disabled for this repo. Oh, that. All right, well, let me try a different repo here. Let me go back into my main. Let's do a repo because that one is one that I forked off of another repo. So let's do one that I created myself. So we'll do C# admin 2024. And we'll change that. And save and test. There we go. That says it ran successfully. So now if I come back here to this particular repository, and if I look at the issues, you can now see there's a new issue. So my C# admin 2024 link to slide deck is broken. Open that up and you can see that there's the body. Okay. All right, so I've created the issue here. Let's go back and edit again. And now let's go back through again and let's go ahead and delete that for the moment. We don't want to create it again. And let's go list issues. Get all issues of a repository. So let's parent B, parent B, and repository name is C# admin 2024. And again, there's a bunch of optional ones here. You can, for instance, if you just want to do the state, like state is open, filter by state is open, I believe that's what it is. Let's do that and test. Okay. And what that should do, it should come back here with information about all the issues in the repository. And there's only one that we just created. Processable entity, is it not is open? Oh, state open. Okay. So Always helps if you know the schema of what you're trying to query do here. We'll save and test that again. And run that. All right, so I ran through that. We'll look at our outputs here. Let's go down here and you can see, here I've got a URL or the URL of the issue, URL of the repository, list of labels, comments, events, a whole bunch of information, links to information. Here's a link to this. There's the title. There's the user that created the issue, information about that user. Any labels, current state of the issue. When it's locked, nobody's assigned to it, so you don't see any assignees. There's no comments that have been added. There's no sub-issues that are tied to it. There's the body and list of reactions. So obviously there's no reactions or anything there. So you can get all this information about the issues that are in your repository. So this would make it really easy for you to create like a user interface. So what you do is maybe create like a service account that is used to create new issues for your repository. That way you're not giving the end users that are reporting these issues direct access to your repository, which you generally don't want to do, especially if it's like a private repo. But you could still create a fairly simple user interface that would be able to create new issues based on maybe an email comes in or even just like a web form. Uh, you could have it look up. So for instance, you could have a web form that where they type in information about an issue, then they could see maybe do like a search. So for instance, you can search your repo or search the issues in a repo based on um, information about the very particular things. So as if we look at all this, you could have labels. So maybe you could send something back where the user can see everything that's of a particular type or a particular label attached to it. You could create something where they could like see a list of open issues. So maybe there's already an existing issue for what they want to report. So they type it in. You do something, maybe use like uh, Azure, document AI to filter out some keywords from what they type in, send that information back as search terms using like the query information, or even there's a let's see here, GitHub. Actually, it might be easier just to search through here. Um, issues. Find issues by state and keyword. So, if you want to create something there, so if we go back over here, and it's there we go. Find issues by state and keyword. So if you want to pass in, um, keywords, and so create some kind of search form. That search form would go out to like Azure AI and get a summary of keywords from a particular block of text that they type in. Send those keywords back through this search field here, and say, okay, give me a list of open issues that match that. So, for instance, you would pass in uh, open, so state colon open. So I do something like, I believe this works. State open, and then type in uh, slide, something like that. So let's save that and just test here. That should give me the same results for both. Okay, why don't you want to run here? Let's try just manually. Not sure why I wouldn't run with that. We'll type that in and let that run. Let's look at the results that came out of that one. And show the outputs. We'll find issues by state and keyword. So you can see the items here. Oh, this is not filtered by my repository. Okay. So you would need to make sure that that's limited to your own repository that you're looking to search. Let's see, I think it is the repository. I can't remember exactly what the keyword is. It might be repository, but if that, I know there's a way on the search bar to filter by the repository that you're looking for, and you would pass that in, and that way you can get back the results just from that particular repository. Then you could use that to create, a list of results that come back, and the user looks at that and says, okay, there's already an open issue for that. I don't need to put it in, or if not, then that gives me the option to create a new repository. So this should be, so it didn't give me any results. I think I've got the repository name wrong, but I'd have to figure that out. But anyway, you get the idea of what you can do with it. So you could do that to create repository issues through an automated process, and just makes it really easy to work with. Um, so so looking at, for instance, like get the list of files from a pull request. So if I don't know if I actually use pull requests in any of my repos. Mostly because most of the stuff that I do in here is just me working on stuff myself, so I don't see much of the point of doing pull request. Maybe just look at my. Oh, I do the pull requests here. So these are automated pull requests, but I also do that. So for instance, here is PR is open. Look at that. So let's look at a couple of those just to see the kind of things that you get back. So let's go ahead and delete these. Again from GitHub. Get a list of files from a pull request. So repository owner, name of the repos, bear codes. My bear codes, and let's just look at like 39. Pull number 39. Okay, and I'll save that to a test. Run that. Okay, so let's look at the outputs from that. So here you can see you can get information about the pull request. In this particular case, all it's doing is updating, file version. So it's only updating the package lock.json and the package.json. So you get information about that, and you could, conceivably come up with something to review, do like a file review. So maybe you want to do some kind of control over a pull request, saying, okay, if it's just certain files being updated, or if there's just certain content in the files, maybe automate that pull request so it automatically goes through no matter what. Or maybe something where if there's certain files you want to have certain users assigned to a pull request review. Say, okay, if it's files in this folder, then it needs to go through maybe our content director, and you could use that to assign the content director as a required viewer on the pull request. You can do things like that by getting this information about the pull request, looking at it and say, okay, for this one I need to do this, this, and this, or or I can automatically approve this without any further review, that kind of thing. So there are various things you could do with that. So really, there is a lot that you can do with the GitHub connector, but again, there are also limitations on what you can do. For instance, like I mentioned before, you can't create branches, you can't mess with branches, you can't uh, you know, create a new commit or anything like that. You can look at existing commits, for instance, you compare two commits. That's really about the only thing you can do with commits is you can look at two commits and compare whether or not they're, you know, the same or different, what the differences are between the two. And that's really the only thing you can do with commits in here. So I'm hoping, because each time I look at this, they have more features that they've added on here. So I'm hoping there's more that you can do where you could create an entire automated process. For instance, one of the things that I would really love to be able to automate is, uh, I've got my blog and then I've got the YouTube videos, and they're two different things. Well, one of the things that I've been doing is I've created this, and I think I've demonstrated this before. I've created this workflow where when I create a new video and it gets published to YouTube, it automatically creates a folder in OneDrive, pulls down, creates uh, a new index.markdown file and a new subfolder and a new folder around that YouTube video so that I can just copy and paste that into my blog code in order to publish that on my blog as well. I would love to be able to automate that one part about creating the files, creating a new pull request based on those files. So, just automatically copy those files um, into my project directory and then create a pull request for that and then publish that so it automatically gets published. Right now, it creates those files, but then I have to manually copy and paste them into my project directory, create a new pull, commit those files, check them in, and create a new pull request. Or actually, I don't do pull requests for that, but create a new commit around that and publish it. I would love for it to be able to automatically do all that, and I can show you here in my code. If I look at my content folder, posts, it's like here's one that I just posted last night or a couple days ago. So basically, it would create this folder. For this one, it was Tech Charlotte podcast. Actually, that's not one that I created for this. That was one I created manually. Hang on. Go to development. There we go. So here's one that, this is a YouTube video. And you can see that it's a very simple. And let's look at the raw here. There we go. Here's a copy of the raw file. So basically what it does is it creates this automatic, creates this index.markdown file, and it automatically tags it based on the hashtags that I put into the YouTube post. It's the YouTube shortcode, and it creates this page that I can easily publish to my blog. Well, that's great, and it creates that and sticks in my OneDrive. But then I have to take this whole folder, copy and paste it into my project code, and then publish, commit it and publish it. I would love to be able to automate that last step, so that it just automatically does that when YouTube publishes it, it goes onto the YouTube RSS feed. It automatically pulls down from that RSS feed, creates this index file, gets the hero image, based off the YouTube snapshot, and puts that in the subfolder here, and then publishes that, and it just have to do that manually now. But I would love to be able to automate that process. So hopefully, that GitHub connector will get that last couple of steps there added to the features that are available, so that I can do all that in a more automated fashion, as opposed to going in there once or a week or once a month and automatically copy or manually copy and pasting those folders and files over. So that's a quick overview, an introduction to the GitHub connector. Kind of give you maybe a couple ideas of things that you could do with it. Some of the things that I've kind of been doing with it, especially around that. Like I say, I think the most useful thing here is around the issues. automatically creating issues and being able to work with those. Um, but maybe you can come up with something a little more creative than what I've got ideas for so far. So enjoy. Thank you.